race fans, it's Taylor, and welcome back to Above the Yellow Line. I figured it was about time to compile all of my videos and all my photos from my Charlotte experience from when I went to the 600 into a vlog-esque type thing, showing you guys what I did, who I saw, who I met, everything that happened while I was in Charlotte. I figured it was about time to show you all the experience. So, without further ado, here is a vlog of my Charlotte experience at the Coca-Cola 600. This episode of Above the Yellow Line is presented by Haymaker Coffee. If you work hard, run hard, fight hard, and play hard, Haymaker Coffee has the coffee for you. Make sure to use the promo code RACE10 to get 10% off your order of Haymaker Coffee. So day one was a Wednesday, and I consider it day one, though it was only a travel day. Getting to Charlotte from Ohio was about 6.5 to 7 hours. We saw a few haulers on our way, but as soon as we got there, we met my grandparents at their camper. Now, I gotta say, if you're ever gonna go to a race, I highly recommend camping. It is a 10 out of 10 experience. It's something different. You get to meet your neighbors, you get to be right at the track, you get to beat the traffic because there is no traffic. So definitely recommend camping if you can. But as soon as we met them, we went to a local brewery, and on our way there, we actually saw some signs for race shops, and on our way back after we got some food, we stopped by RFK's shop. Now at this point they were closed, so I just hopped out of the car and took a picture next to the sign. I also got a picture next to the Rusty Wallace Drive sign, and that was super cool, and that was actually my first time seeing a race shop, so it was very surreal. Then in my unkept hair and my Ford shirt, I felt it was very appropriate to go to Hendrick Motorsports to take a picture in front of the race shop sign where all my love of NASCAR began. Now, unfortunately, I did not get to actually tour the race shop, so that's something I would love to do my next time I am in Charlotte. But the grand schemes, just the grandness of Hendrick Motorsports is unbeatable. I didn't realize race shops could be that big, but it was literally like a college campus, I felt like, if you were able to kind of go back farther and drive through the area where the shop is. It was massive, so I'm looking forward to seeing more of the shop the next time I go to Charlotte, but that was day one. Day two I call Shop Hop Day, and for a very good reason. We literally went from shop to shop in a very short time frame. All the racing shops close around like 3:30 or 4 during the day, so we booked it to everywhere we could, and I gotta commend my mom and my dad and my grandparents for sticking with me because I don't think we had a lunch, so they were very tough during the day, and our day started early at Junior Motorsports. We got there around 9 a.m. and I thought that was good timing, but some people got there at 4 a.m. to be able to meet Dale Jr., and unfortunately I was not able to, but gosh, they got there super early, which was absolutely insane. And the line was so long, like I could not see the race shop as soon as we got there. Like we were so far back. Like I said, when we got to the front of the line, Dale had to hop on a plane to go to the Indy 500 broadcast, but Kelly Earnhardt stuck around and I got to meet her, which was incredible because for me, she's such an inspiration, and that made my morning to be able to talk to her. Now, the event itself, though, was also pretty amazing. They had sponsors, tents there, freebies, driver cars, haulers. They also had Bojangles, and I've never had it before, me being from Ohio, and I gotta say, 10 out of 10. It was very good. We also got to go into part of the shop, and we saw some cars in the garage area on display, and then we walked into the gift shop, and in the back of that room, there was the entrance to the Dale Jr. download set. And holy crap, I was floored. The amount of detail in the studio, on the table, on the walls, all the history infused in that room was so surreal and very impressive. And I thought my set was cool. This was on a whole other level. I was so thrilled to be able to see the set. So right after we checked that out, we went over to Penske, and as soon as you entered the doors, you had a gift shop area, then you went up some stairs, and then you overlooked a balcony that oversaw all of the garage areas, the haulers, and everything. Looking to your left, you saw all the Penske haulers, and if you moved your gaze over to the right, it was a massive open floor plan with all of their cars and all of their tools just laid out for you all to see. It was my first time actually in a race shop, so I was blown away by the scale of everything. We got to see Blaney, Logano, and Cindric's cars for the weekend, and they also had, I think, replicas of Rusty Wallace's Miller car too, which I thought was pretty neat. And although I thought Penske was very cool, when we arrived at Stewart Haas Racing's shop, they actually had the cars out on the floor for fans to peer into and take pictures with, which was really cool. They even had Kurt Busch's Daytona 500 win car still with grass and all over it. And next to that was this really neat Game of Thrones style gear wrench throne made with wrenches, which was the perfect photo opportunity, so of course I had to take a picture in the seat. And behind the throne and the cars was an actual glassed off view of their garage area. You could actually see the cars that they were going to be bringing to the track that weekend. I was kind of bummed that it was such a far away view, but nevertheless, it was a look inside the camp of Stewart-Haas Racing. So we saw that, and before we left, we headed to the gift shop, and then we left Stewart-Haas Racing, and then we took a bit of a detour to see the Dale Sr. statue in Mooresville, and it was so beautiful. If you have a chance to take a little bit of a detour during your trip just to see that and take it all in, I highly recommend that. After checking that out, we drove over to Joe Gibbs Racing, and kind of like Stewart-Haas Racing, they had cars out for display for the fans to kind of peer in and see. They had one of Bobby Labonte. They also had a Denny Hamlin Daytona 500 win. Joe Gibbs Racing also had a balcony type fan walk like Penske did, but it was glassed off, and unlike Penske's where you could really see everything, we felt like we were kind of blocked off from some of the views. We did see all of the cars for the weekend and everyone working on them, and I will say I did love the fact that on their fan walk they had some of the trophies in display cases, and you could also see some fire suits and a lot more memorabilia from Joe Gibbs Racing's history. We got to see a lot at all of these shops, but unfortunately they were closing as I was approaching around 3:30, 4 o'clock, so we headed over to the NASCAR Hall of Fame. First off, didn't realize the Hall of Fame was going to be as big as it was, but of course it was holding a lot of cars, and as soon as you walked in to the building, you got to see some of those cars on Glory Road, which had the cars of NASCAR past all on display, on the floor, and on the banking, which actually represented what the banking looks like at certain tracks, which I found very informational. But looking at the cars themselves, they were gorgeous, and I got to learn a lot in that section just at the beginning to immerse myself in the history of the sport. And one thing I really liked about Glory Road is that they actually had track surface models on plaques for you to feel, and I found that very educational as well for someone who struggles to understand how different track surfaces really affect the cars. So if you go to the Hall of Fame, definitely make sure to pay attention to that section of Glory Road. So if you walk up the road, it leads you to floor number 2 where they have the Hall of Fame display cases for that year's class. So I got to see Junior's display case, Stephanakis' display case, Red Farmer's display case. And the room was just flooded with former Hall of Famer names, and it was a very prestigious room as it should be, but to get a closer look at the display cases themselves was also very cool because I watched the videos on YouTube, but then again, it's much different to see them in person. And then when you walked out of that room, you saw Bubba Wallace's Talladega win car, so that was also cool to see that in person. And if you stepped back from that car, you walked into a massive room that had a ton of breakdowns of what goes into making a Gen 7 car or just a NASCAR car in general. There was also some simulator racing that you could do, which I got to do. Shout out to Matt Deason for getting my family passes to that because it only expanded my want to get a rig at my house. So thank you, Matt, for making me want to spend more money. Across from where you entered the sim racing, there was a pit stop challenge and a hauler that you could walk through, and I didn't know that the haulers had microwaves in them, so that was a very new learning experience for me. And if you looked across from where you exit the simulator challenge, on the other side of the wall there was a broadcasting challenge thing that you could do where you tried to call historic moments from races. I think they had a race from 2021 on there that you could call, which was fun. But then if you looked right across from where the simulator exit was, it was Jimmy Johnson's One Final Time ride, and then he had all of his major fire suits hung up on the wall that was next to that, and it headed up to the next floor, which was Heritage Speedway. This floor was so neat because, like it mentions, or like it alludes to, you were literally walking through NASCAR history. You were seeing the progression of safety, you were seeing fire suits, helmets from NASCAR All-Stars. And then you got to step into something called a spotter ball that was along that walkway, and I had no clue that any of these things existed. Very, very bizarre. I didn't know that anything like that existed in the sport, but I learned a lot during the Hall of Fame trip, and that was definitely something I learned. And then as you were leaving, you were able to see a Dale Sr. incident report from his fatal crash, and when talking to some of my friends that went to the Hall of Fame, some of them didn't even know it was there, so make sure you keep an eye out for that when you go, because you can read actually one of the pages that they have open. So after touring all of the exhibits, we stopped at the gift shop, I got some merch, and then we headed back to the RV, and I gotta say, shout out to Dom Joseph for helping us plan this day, because I had no clue where to go in the Charlotte area, so it made the shop hop more manageable, but we were all glad, though we had a great day, but glad to rest up and get ready for a big day for day 3, the Truck and Arca race. So day 3 on Friday was the Arca and truck race, but before we got to any racing, my dad, my grandpa, and we went to the RFK Fan event, and we got there really early to make sure that we were able to meet Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski, and I'm happy to report we did. I got to meet Chris Buescher back in 2018 with my Kentucky Speedway Hot Pass, so it was awesome to see him again. Also during the RFK Fan Day, I got to enter a raffle to win a signed jersey by Chris Buescher, and then later in the afternoon I got this message.
Congratulations, Taylor. You're winner number 1.
And I proceeded to freak out later. So here's me with the jersey. I was very excited to have won it. So thank you to RFK and Chris Buescher for sending that out here to Ohio. And then after I met Chris Buescher, I got to meet Brad for the first time since I joined the sport, and he was the one driver I wanted to meet because I have such a respect for him, and he was, I think, one of the first Cup Series drivers that was a veteran member that I really keyed in on, so it was so surreal to be able to meet him, and he was very kind. Also, I got to meet the boss man himself, Jack Roush. He was actually standing in front of the fan event, just as fans were kind of pouring in front of all these fancy cars. Jack was super nice and took the time to talk to all of us that were out there, so it was very neat to meet him and get some signatures in the process. For the event itself, RFK went all out. Like Junior Motorsports did the previous day, they had sponsored tents, live events, freebies. They also had Brad and Chris's cars out for the fans to take a closer look at. There was also a live demonstration of how to wrap a car, which is not easy to do, as I imagined in my head, but to see them wrap the car from start to finish was also very eye-opening. Like I said, it was much more detail-oriented and difficult than I thought it ever would be. I also was able to walk into their gift shop and museum, and I say museum because comparing RFK to the Hall of Fame experience, it was pristine. It took you on a journey from start to finish of the organization to where they are now and from where they were. They had a ton of cars and fire suits out from each driver that raced there and a pit box for the fans to look at. RFK was the last race shop that I went to on my trip, and I gotta say, hands down, if there is one shop that you are able to go to during your trip, whether you're at the 600 or whether you're just going around at Charlotte trying to look for NASCAR stuff, it has to be Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. 10 out of 10, hands down. Not only was it the most beautiful shop we went into, but it literally was such an immersive experience. So, one, kudos to RFK Racing for giving their fans a really cool experience to go to when you go to their shop, but also, guys, you definitely have to check it out. It is a must-see. So after we saw their shop, we went back to the camper and rested up for the Arca and truck race to meet some friends. After talking to each other for over a year, it was so surreal to finally meet the Above Yellow Line team, Adam, Lucas, Dom, Joseph. I also got to meet Adam's girlfriend, Karina. It's like we'd been friends for a lifetime. It was so cool to finally just be able to talk in person instead of through a screen, so I was grinning ear to ear seeing them all for the very first time in person. But before we headed to the track, we explored the tents outside of the track with extensive amounts of merch. There was vintage NASCAR merch, new NASCAR merch, die-cast t-shirts. We all bought way too much and made our rounds each day to see what new merch would emerge. But after an initial look, we headed to Speed Street with all the manufacturer displays and cars. When we got there, we got to see some drivers and chat it up.
Tyler, how was your car this weekend? Very quiet, very quiet.
We also got to sit in some of the model cars, and that was such a fun photo opportunity for all of us. I will say I do not look menacing as a race car driver at all, so I would not be a good race car driver, but also in the process we got to stock up on some Coca-Cola Zero Sugar and bolted to the track for the Arca race. Now, walking into the track was such an event. They had driver footprints and handprints all along the walkway headed up to the track, and with me only going to Kentucky Speedway before, this track was just massive. And for the truck event mostly, but even for the Arca race, there was a lot of fans in the stands, more than I expected, which was also great to see. Now, regarding the Arca race, I'm not even going to get into it. There was, like, I think less than 25 laps led under green, and it was a fun time, don't get me wrong, but the racing and the amount of cautions that we had was a little unbearable. But like I said, it was still a fun time. And then, of course, when we got to the truck race, I got to meet some more friends, mutual friends of Dom and Adams from the Hall of Fame. And I've got to say, if you can go to a race with anybody, obviously go with your family, but if you can go with your friends, go with your friends. Going with friends made the experience so much more fun, and I have to say the truck race was filled with action, a lot of passing, lots of battles for position, and that made it so much more fun when you were watching it with your friends. I love seeing Chastain with the watermelon smash for the win. It was truly a great time. Day 4 was the first day. Everything just kind of slowed down a little bit. We didn't do anything in the morning. I know Hendrick had their fan event that morning, but I felt like we all deserved to sleep in. So that's what we did to prepare for a really hot day at the Xfinity race. Allgaier and Barry put on a clinic and almost wrecked each other out multiple times, and it was such a shame because I heard on the broadcast I don't think they highlighted that battle as well, so that was a bummer, but I got to see it in person, so I'm not going to be the one complaining. I got to see a great race for the win. This was also the first time that weekend that I got to sit and watch a race with my family, and my parents had never gone to a race before, so that was so fun to see them experience it for the first time. I sat between my mom and my dad, and my mom got really into the racing. We were able to talk some strategy and talk about all the Xfinity things, and also we were able to talk about Noah Gragson. That just plowed through the field 1 cylinder down. That was very impressive, but guys, I mentioned this before, it was such a hot day. I think we all had heat exhaustion at the end of that race, even though we all stocked up on cold cans, whether it was beverages for the adults. Me, I personally don't drink, so I had a whole bunch of Coke Zero Sugar and water, but even that really didn't do the trick, so we were all happy, even though we were treated to a show with the Xfinity race, but we were all happy to kind of book it back to the camper and cool off and get ready for the Cup race the next day. And just like that, we have reached the final day of the Coca-Cola 600 adventure with the actual Coca-Cola 600 race. Of course, that wasn't the only race going on that day. We also had Monaco and the Indy 500. Dom actually came over and we tried to watch those on YouTube TV. The Wi-Fi wasn't necessarily working, so we did the best we could, but then we headed over to the track to be able to do the Bob Pockrass tweet up. I keep using the word surreal, but to be able to meet Bob Pockrass was surreal because I followed his coverage of the sport on Twitter for forever, so that was very cool, and he also brought guests along with him. One of those guests was Todd Gilliland, and he chatted a bit about his rookie season and some of the challenges that he might face headed into the Charlotte race. And then Marcus Smith also stopped by and talked to all of us, welcoming us to the track and answered some fan questions about the All-Star race that was the week before, and he also listened to fan suggestions, which I thought was pretty neat that he took the time to actually listen to the fans and get some feedback. After that, we headed back down Speed Street again and then headed back to the camper for some food before we walked back to the track for the 600. I've seen the pre-race ceremonies on TV before, but there's nothing like seeing it in person. They were beautiful and phenomenal. NASCAR, they've always done a good job at supporting their troops, but man, just being at the track, you really felt that just support and pride for the troops that were there. It was such an incredible sight. And before we knew it, the event had actually begun. The green flag dropped and the race was on its way. Now look, I know it was over 600 miles with overtimes making it the longest race in NASCAR history, miles-wise, but it didn't feel that way at all. There were incredible battles all day long. Seeing Suarez battle his way through the field, he could have won the 600. I think he could have, but that was impressive. Chris Buescher, holy cow, that crash was wild. It kind of started right in front of where we were sitting. And even before the Buescher wreck, there was also carnage in turn 2 with Blaney collecting some of the field. And then at the very end, in overtime, Austin Dillon almost won the 600 again with a great run on the overtime start, and unfortunately, that caused a wreck and ended a lot of guys' days. Let's not forget about that crazy battle between Briscoe and Larson, and what's so surreal to me is I can sit down at the end of the day, look at a camera, and say that I attended one of NASCAR's best races in their history. That it was a phenomenal event, and I think we can all agree that, yeah, it was one of NASCAR's best races that they have ever put on. So, in conclusion, if you have one race to go to as a NASCAR fan, yes, the Daytona 500 can be argued. I totally understand that. But in my humble opinion, you have to go to the Coca-Cola 600. If you don't have your tickets for next year, I don't know what you're doing. Make sure you are able to experience it at least once in your life because it was truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I am so glad I got to go, and I hope to go back again in the future. So, that was my Charlotte experience. What do you think of it? Leave that in the comments below. And with that, we are done with this episode of Above the Yellow Line, the show where we talk all about the NASCAR Cup Series. Though this was a great off week, I'm excited to go back racing at Nashville this weekend, and then I'll be recapping that in the next video, and then I'll be previewing the race at Road America, plus having some NASCAR news involved in that video as well. So stay tuned from that. But to hear more from us in the meantime, make sure you follow us on our social media pages at @TaylorKitchen_ on Twitter for post-race polls and daily questions, and Above the Yellow Line on Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Also make sure to check out TobyChristie.com on all social media platforms to find great motorsports content, and TobyChristie.com to hear and read more from the team and your favorite drivers. Last but not least, I want to thank Zyloware and Haymaker Coffee for supporting Above the Yellow Line and TobyChristie.com. You can find all of our socials linked in the description below, but before you check those out, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this with your friends and family, and guys, thank you so much for supporting us here at Above the Yellow Line and TobyChristie.com, and until next time, I'll see ya.